Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Week 7 lab for the subject Application Development with .NET. So let me just share my screen with today's tasks. Yep, so can you all see my screen? Okay, that's great. So in today's lab, we have no quiz, but just two questions. And these two questions, they are based on Windows forms, which will help you in your final assignment. So let's start with the first program. So in the first program, our task is to create a simple student restaurant management system using Windows Forms with the following specifications. So the first specification being design an interface form which displays the food items available in the restaurant and their prices. So here we will use different objects like checkbox, labels, buttons, and GroupBox. Use a checkbox for each food item. All the menu/food items should be in a GroupBox named menu. So you see a GroupBox here called menu. Use label to display the corresponding price for each food item. So we have these labels used for each food item. And the interface form should have a button named order. Once food items are selected and the order button is clicked, a receipt with the total price is shown in the message box, and a sample has also been given below. So once you have selected the corresponding food items, like for instance tea and cereal, and you click on order, you should see something like this, a window pop up saying your order details, the items that you have bought, and the total price. And the second button named exit is used to close the program. So you see a button next to exit that will be used for closing this program. So we also have to write a method named public string get receipt to process the selected food items based and calculate their total price. The method is inside the public partial class form1 form. And there is also an example in this interface shown above. Tea, coffee, and cereal were selected, and the order details were shown in the message box along with the total price. So basically, this again just refers to this particular box here. And the get receipt method returns a string which is created by concatenating the food item names, prices, and the total price. The receipt also has a header such as student restaurant and your order details, which also has to be concatenated. So student restaurant and your order details, that's a string which has to be added up. And after that, we display the food items that we have selected and the total price for those items. So there are a couple of hints given as well. So the food items can be accessed by the checkbox 1.txt, which returns a string. Make sure, not in the cases of the names, but when you're dealing with prices, make sure that you convert your strings into ints or floats so that you can perform mathematical operations on it. Prices are displayed as labels and can be accessed by label1.text, which returns a string. The price values are string and should be converted to double to calculate the total value. Create a checkbox and label arrays and add each of the food items and prices to them respectively. So checkbox, menu items, new checkbox. So we have a total of 7 items. That's why there's a 7 here. And basically, we're assigning the names to each of these checkboxes. And then we are creating an array of labels. And we have named these labels as well, which is tea, coffee price, juice price. And these will be used for storing the price information. The status of the checkbox can be found by accessing the checkbox1.checked property, which is a Boolean value, which means it can only have a value true or false. And we can use the /n escape sequence while formatting the receipt string. You will require a -n, which is new line, when you're trying to print your order details. So that is where this will come in handy. Okay, so this was it for the first program. Now let's move on to the second program. So basically the second program is just a modified version of the first program that you just created. But this time we have a little bit of a different UI. So instead of having checkboxes, we have sort of like pick lists. So let's go over to the specifications for the second program. So in this, we are supposed to design an interface or form which displays the food items available in the restaurant and their prices. The controls to use are ListBox, labels, buttons, and GroupBox. Use a ListBox to display all the food items. The food item list and the price list should be in a GroupBox named menu. So this is a GroupBox called menu, and the items and prices are then inside it. Use a list box to display the corresponding prices of each food item, but it should be disabled for the selection as it just displays the price. Because obviously you don't want to have to select the prices as well after selecting the items. And the interface form should also have a button named order. Once food items are selected and the order button is clicked, a receipt with the total price is shown in a label in a separate group box as shown in the example. So once you have selected the items, for example, tea, banana bread, sushi, and drinks, you click order, and on the right-hand side, you should have your receipt, which says the student restaurant, your order details, and the items that you have selected with their total price. Then again, there will be a second button named exit, which will be used to close this program. So basically, once you have done this part in the first program, you can simply reuse it in the second program as well. And you will have to rewrite a method named public string get receipt to process the selected food items in the list box and calculate the total price. We have to rewrite it because we're using a different control system this time, since we're using list boxes instead of labels. The method is inside the public partial class form1 form. So there is an example as well. In the example form, which was shown above, the selected food items and the order details are shown in a label along with the total price in the receipt group box, which again, it just refers to this part of the image. The get receipt method returns a string, which is created by concatenating the food item names, prices, and the total price. The receipt also has a header such as student restaurant and your order details, which are also concatenated, just the same as the first program. So nothing has to be changed really here in the way you output this string. So once you are done with the first program, you can simply reuse that code here as well. And then there are a couple of hints given as well for the second program. So the indexes of the food items selected can be accessed using listbox1.selected indices, which will allow you to get the items which have been selected by the user. The text/name of the corresponding selected items can be accessed using listbox.items, the index value to string, and use a for each loop to provide all the indexes returned by listbox1.selected indices so that you can iterate over the selected boxes. And the final hint that is given is the price values are string and should be converted to double so that you can have the total value. So these are the instructions for today's programs. So this once again, make sure you understand it properly so that you can use these concepts in your final assignment as well. So I'll leave you guys to the questions and I will start explaining the solutions in the last 30 minutes. Meanwhile, if you have any problems, kindly let me know. Thank you. I believe most of you should be done with your programs by now. So let's start with the discussion of the solution for these programs. So let me just share my screen once again. Can you all see my screen? Okay, that's great. Okay, so by default, when you open this program, this is what you're going to see. But to actually see the code for the form that you have created, you have to click on form1.cs, double click on that. And once you see the GUI, just right click and click on view code. Okay, so let's start discussing the solution now. So as usual, we have a couple of import statements on the top. So using system, then we have our namespace defined, which is week 7 program 1. Then we have the requirements of the form. So public partial class form 1 is form. Then we initialize the components. So public form 1 and this function initialize components. And then finally, we write our first method, which is to generate the payment receipt based on the items that the user selects. So we start off by defining the initial variables that we are going to use. So the first variable being the total price, where we will store the prices for all the items that we are buying. And then the second variable is the string called receipt, and that will simply print out the details such as the student restaurant and the order details based on the items that we have selected. And then the next step, once we have defined the variables, is to create a checkbox array for the food items and assign each food item to an element. So this is how we create a checkbox array for the food items: checkbox menu items, the checkbox 7, since we have 7 different items that we can order. So then we are simply assigning each food item to an element. So menu item 0 is tea, coffee. Menu item 1 is juice, and menu item 2 is bread. Be aware, since the index starts from 0, that is why we have 0 here. And then final menu item being drinks. So once we have managed to create a checkbox array for the food items, the next step is to create a label array for the food item prices, and then assign each price item to an element. So a similar procedure, just like one that we just followed. So we create the label array by writing label price, new label 7, once again 7 because we have 7 different items. And then we simply start assigning the price item to an element. So price 0 is for tea, coffee price 1 is for juice price, and so on. And the last price being the drinks price. So now that we have created the label array and the checkbox array and assigned the appropriate items to an element, the next step is to be able to get the receipt or the total value for the order based on the items that we have selected. And this can be done by using a for loop. So we write for int loop var, which is the looping variable, which starts at 0. And this is the condition. So looping variable is less than the menu items dot length, and menu items dot length is nothing but 7 based on the number of items we had defined. And what we are doing is we are incrementing the value of the looping variable by 1 each time. Okay, since now we have defined the for loop for our program, the next step is to implement a couple of if conditions. So we have our first if condition defined here. And what we're trying to basically do here is to figure out which items have been selected by the user himself. So that can be done by writing this menu items looping var dot check is equal to true. This will make sure that basically this will help us to check whether the menu item has been checked by the user or not. And based on that, we can concatenate that item and its price to the receipt string we have, and also add the total price, also add the price for that item into the variable called total price that we had created in the beginning. And And it's always important to remember that we convert the total price to double, because initially those label arrays, they have those values stored as strings, and you cannot perform mathematical operations on strings. And that is the reason why we are performing the operation to double. And once we have managed to convert it to double, we can successfully add that price into the variable called total price. And once this for loop finishes, we have all the items that the user had checked stored in a string called receipt, and even have the prices for all the items that had been selected and stored in the variable called total price. And now what is left to be done is add the total price to the receipt. So how do we do that? We write receipt plus total price, the $sign plus, so basically concatenating another string into that existing string, and we write the variable where the price is actually stored. So total price to string. And once we have updated the total price in the receipt itself, all that is left to be done is to return that receipt to once this for loop ends. So that is what is done here. Then we have a couple of different checkboxes or actions. What happens when you click on a particular label? We don't have to fill up most of them, but only the one that says order click, because once the user clicks on the order button, we should be able to generate a receipt for the items that the user had selected. And this can be done by writing string receipt is equal to get receipt, which is basically but nothing but calling the method that we had just written above. And then what do we do is we use a message box to show the receipt and the contents of the variable itself. Then we have a couple of more possible events that can be happened for different checkboxes. Since it's not really important for us, we don't really fill them out. And then we have to write the code for the second button, which was the exit, because you want to be able to exit that window. And that can be simply be done by writing application.exit, and that's it. So let me just try to run this program for you all. And there you go. And a GUI pops up, which and the heading being student restaurant. Then we have the group box saying menu. We have the items on the left-hand side, which are checkboxes. Then we have prices on the right-hand side, which are label arrays. And by simply clicking the items I want to buy. So in this instance, I want to buy banana bread, and banana bread would be good with tea. So I'll buy tea, and I can simply just click order now. And I will have a message pop up to me, which says student restaurant, your order details. So tea, coffee, so that is $4.80. Banana bread, that is $2.50. And then finally, we have our total price printed off, which is $7.3. Any questions in this? And once I press OK, that window gets closed. And now let's test out the functionality for the second button event that we had written, which was the exit button. And as the name suggests, once I click exit, the application closes. So this was the first program. So any questions? Or else we move on to the next program. Okay, so if no more questions, then let's just move on to the second program. The second program is not much different from the first program itself. Basically, the only thing that we have changed is the UI, or how the windows actually look when they pop up. So let me just close this. So by default, when you open the program.cs, you will only just see this code. So make sure you click on form 1 and you will view the code. And once again, once we open the code, we are presented with a couple of import statements. So in this case, once again, we have using system, just like our previous program. And the next step is to define the namespace. So the namespace in this case is week 7 program 2. And then again, we have our form beginning from this point. So public partial class form 1 is form. and we should initialize the components of all the forms. So public form 1, initialize component, and then finally we are not writing, but we are actually modifying the method get receipt that we had written in the previous program to match the needs of the current program. So we have initialized two variables. Once again, these variables are pretty much the same as what we had done in the previous program. And the only thing that is different this time is the for loop that we run. So previously we were running the for loop on all the 7 elements or the 7 items that we had. But this time we're running a for loop only on the selected items by using the for loop called for each. And we are running it using int items. So items being an integer in menu items dot selected indices. This will allow us to only have the values that have been selected by the user. And based on that, what we can do is we can concatenate the selected food items and their prices to the string called receipt. And then we can also have the total price updated as well based on the items that we select. So that is again done by the pretty much the same as the previous program. And once again, we're converting that string value into double so that we can actually add these values together. And once we have the total price for the selected items, all that is left to be done is to add the total price into the variable called receipt. So we have receipt is equal to receipt plus the string that we want to concatenate. So which is the total price and the actual price value. So which is stored in the variable total price, and we are converting it into a string. And once we have appended or concatenated that new information into receipt, all that is left to be done is to return the variable called receipt. So that is what we do here. And the last line returns all the contents that were stored in the variable receipt. And then once we have done that, we have a couple of more events that we could write our code for, such as button click. So since this program will have two buttons that we will be using, one for the getting the application to exit, and second for actually getting or generating the receipt based on the items that we have selected. So let's start off by discussing the exit button. So as usual, the exit button requires only one line of code, which is application.exit, and it will simply exit the application just like we saw in the previous program. And then we have the second button, which is the order button. And how that works is, once again, it works in a similar way just like the last program. You're calling the method that we wrote, which was for getting the receipt based on the items we had selected, and we are storing it in the variable called receipt. And based on that, what we are doing is we are showing the receipt string in a label in the receipt group box, which we will see on the right hand side. So let me just run this program. Okay, so this is how the program would look like. So last time we had a couple of checkboxes here, and we had label arrays to represent the price. But this time we have a different data structure that we're using. Not a data structure, but a different kind of a button we're using, or a control, which is a group box. So if you want to select any item, all you have to do is you have to click on the items that you want to buy. So in this case, I want to buy some pizza and I want to buy some juice so that it's healthy, and I select those items and I click order. And once I click the order, the get receipt method gets called, and we are presented with the text in the right hand side group box. And the content that is presented to us is the content of the string that we had, which is called the receipt string. And all that we are printing is the order details, such as the items that I had selected, which was juice and pizza, and their actual total price. And once I click exit, the application gets terminated. So any questions? It's fairly simple, and I would recommend you to experiment with all these labels checkboxes at home as well, so that it can help you with your assignment, because you have to design a GUI in your assignment. So make sure you are experimenting with this enough so that you can make the best out of your assignment. Okay, I'll wait till 3:50. You guys all just go through the content once again. If you feel you're still facing some problems, let me know, or else we can terminate the session. Okay, seems like we have no more questions. So thank you everyone for joining the session today. I hope I was able to help you out, and see you all next week, and have a great week ahead. See you all next time. Bye.